let's start with the ancient text of Torah. So if you look at Judaism, Torah is our foundation. Torah, and then the second section is the prophets, Nevi'im, and then the third section is the writings, which is Ketuvim, what many Christians call Old Testament. We would never use that term. It's not a great term to use in interfaith dialogue. The Catholic Church really actually gave us a very different text or different title, which I love, and that's called Hebrew Scriptures. Vatican II named Hebrew Scriptures. So we'll try and use that in interfaith conversation. That's really important to note that if you say Old Testament, then you're really telling me a couple of things. One is that you're talking about the Septuagint text, which is the Christian text of what we call Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the prophets, and the writings. We don't use that text. It's a later compilation than the Masoretic text, which is the Hebrew text. That's why the Hebrew Scriptures. So the Septuagint is a Greek text, a Greek text, a Greek translation of the Hebrew, and then goes to Latin or English or whatever else is the movement. So it's in a different order, and the interpretation's different. Just look at Isaiah, because Isaiah, from a Christian perspective, is kind of the foreshadowing of the coming of the Messiah. That's not how we read it. We understand it in a very different way. So we use the Hebrew text. We don't really use the Old Testament. That's not even the use of what we're. So that's important for you to know. The other piece is that we don't believe in the New Testament. So that means that there's nothing old about it. Nothing old about Torah for us. It's ever changing, always interpretive. And it is our Constitution, if you want to kind of use the difference. Like saying, oh, that old Constitution, we don't have to worry about that anymore. No. We go back to the Constitution because it's very important. That's what Torah is. So that's a little bit of kind of framing the conversation. Women in Judaism, you look at the Torah and you see that there are women who are extremely strong. Let's take Rebecca, for example. I named my daughter Rebecca. Rebecca is a woman who made some hard decisions. It wasn't easy. She has twins, Jacob and Esau. Her husband, Isaac, the father of her children, prefers Esau because he's kind of the outdoors guy. She prefers Jacob as a way of making sure that sort of the tradition goes on. And so the two of them, I don't suggest this is a quite dysfunctional family. That's another lecture that I give, is the dysfunction of the families in the 5 books of Moses. It's fascinating, but I'm not giving that today. So the idea is that she needs to make a decision. She knows that only one of them can continue the Israelite tradition, the Israelite people. She's the one that make sure that it's Jacob. Jacob manipulates on his own level, but she ultimately manipulates the situation for better or for worse in order for Jacob to be the continuation of the Israelite people. That's no shrinking violet here. That is not at all. That is a strong woman. And there we see that in a very major way. You take the beginning of the book of Exodus. Exodus is a story of how Joseph, Jacob's son, gets down to Egypt, and how the Israelite people get down to Egypt is because there's a famine, and Joseph interprets a dream, and Pharaoh's dream becomes the right-hand person of Pharaoh, the most powerful person in that part of the world at that time. A Jew, an Israelite, becomes the right hand. It's amazing. Oh my goodness. Well, what happens is that Pharaoh dies, Joseph dies, and a new leader arises who knew not Joseph. And that is the actual text, who knew not Joseph. And then what did they do? They put the Israelite people into servitude. They get scared. They feel like these people are all too powerful. And so they begin servitude for these people who have been there for hundreds of years, but it doesn't matter. And that's an anti-Semitism text, which anti-Semitism lecture that I'm not going to give tonight, but is really the beginning of what we experience around anti-Semitism. So here we have now these people who are in servitude and they need a leader to give them back. Well, it's 5 women who make sure that a leader arises. Moses. Who are the 5 women? Well, first there's Shiphrah and Puah, the 2 midwives. Pharaoh, as part of his decree to make the Israelite people slaves and to, in some ways, when we are controlling a people, it's because we're afraid of them. So what did he tell all the midwives of the land? To kill a baby boy that is born to the Hebrews. And Shiphrah and Puah are like, I don't think we do that. That's not what we're trained to do. They defy Pharaoh. That's pretty remarkable. How about civil disobedience? I mean, that is civil disobedience. And so we have these 2 women, Shiphrah and Puah, the 2 midwives at the very beginning in the first chapter of the book of Exodus that say, nope, we're not going to do that. That's not how we look at the world. We are going to keep these babies born. And lo and behold, a baby is born during this time and his name is Moses. But they're afraid if the baby cries that somebody is going to it's going to come and kill him. So his mother, Yocheved, takes him and takes care of him. His sister, Miriam. Okay, we got now 4 women who are protecting him. They see Pharaoh's daughter, Batya, go to the river, to go to the Nile and begin to wash up and to do what women did at that time. And so they put the baby in a basket and sent it to Batya, thinking and knowing that a woman wouldn't kill a baby, that a woman would take this Hebrew child in. And sure enough, Batya does. Pharaoh's daughter brings a Hebrew child into Pharaoh's court. Wow, that is a strong woman. And so she then says, this is a Hebrew child. It's not, is it a Hebrew child? This is a Hebrew child. I'm going to take him back. And then says, oh, wait a minute, I need a nursemaid. There's a woman over there. Can you be a nursemaid? So Yocheved, his mother, is able to nurse him in Pharaoh's court. Really powerful, right? There is this amazing reality. And then we fast forward. Moses is in the court. He sees a Hebrew slave being mistreated and he kills the Egyptian who is mistreating the slave and realizes, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm sort of showing who I am. And when somebody recognizes what has happened, he runs away. He runs to a place called Midian, and he then marries Zipporah, who is the Midianite priestess, and she is the one who goes back with him to Egypt and makes sure that his sons who are born in Midian are circumcised. She makes sure she circumcises them. She's a Mohelet. So here we have these 6 women who have created the hopes and dreams of the Israelite people. These are not shrinking violets. And I can give you at each and every spot women who gave their lives to make sure that the future was in good hands, that there was going to be survival of the Jewish people.